Have you ever heard that you need to prove your worth, that you have to do more, speak more, be more visible so that others will recognize you? I want you to pause for a moment because maybe everything you've been taught about showing who you are is completely wrong. For years, I've worked with women who are exhausted from constantly having to prove their worth. Smart, capable women who've turned their lives into an endless performance, and they all ask me the same question: how can I be seen? But the real question is different. Why do you need to be seen to know you are valuable? Today, I want to share something with you that can radically transform your relationship with yourself and with the world. We won't be talking about techniques to impress others or strategies to attract attention. We'll be talking about something much deeper and more revolutionary, about the power that radiates when you are in touch with yourself, when you are centered, aware of your being, because your true worth doesn't need to be spoken, shown, or validated by others. Your worth radiates from within. Picture for a moment that one woman you know. Maybe you saw her in a meeting at a cafe or walking down the street. She doesn't speak much, doesn't gesture dramatically, doesn't seek the spotlight. But when she's there, something in the room shifts. People listen when she speaks, seek her gaze, feel drawn to her energy. What does this woman have that she doesn't need to shout who she is? The answer lies in something society has forgotten: authentic presence. This ability to be fully in one's body, in one's experience, without the need for external validation. But let's pause here, because I know what you're thinking. That sounds nice, but I live in the real world. I have a job, relationships, responsibilities. I can't just be present and expect everything to work out. And you're right, but what you don't know is presence isn't a passive act. It's the most powerful action you can take. Being present in yourself isn't a meditation technique from a weekend seminar. It's a return to the body that you are, the awareness of your breath as an anchor, pulling you into the here and now, feeling the energy that flows through you without resistance. When you truly dwell in yourself, you stop searching for yourself outside, in the eyes of others, in their words, in their approval. You stop being a stranger in your own life. I've seen women completely transform when they learn to breathe consciously. I'm not talking about breathing exercises, but that breath that comes when you allow yourself to feel the air moving through your body as if for the first time. That breath tells you, you are alive, you are here, you are enough. Do you know the difference between being present to meet expectations and being present to feel every moment? The first drains you, the second nourishes you. But let's talk about something that may trigger resistance in you: trust. Not the performative confidence based on success and external validation, but the trust that comes from knowing who you are, beyond all the stories of how you should be. That trust is quiet because it has nothing to prove. It's the inner security that says, I am unique, not because I'm better than others, but because I am true to myself. I remember a woman who came to me after years of relationships in which she constantly felt inferior. She had developed an incredible ability to sense what others wanted to hear and shaped her personality to fit their expectations. Her self-worth was entirely dependent on outside affirmation. I asked her to tell me about herself, without mentioning her achievements, her job, her relationships, or others' opinions. She was silent for several minutes. I don't know who I am, she finally said. And that was the beginning of her true growth, Peter, because real trust begins where you can say, I am, without needing to explain it. Now I ask you to recall the last moment when you truly felt peaceful. I don't mean the kind of relaxation that comes when all problems are solved, but that deep inner peace that arises when you consciously decide not to give in to the constant urgency of the outer world. That peace is subversive. It's a radical act of resistance in a society that demands you to always be on the move, constantly producing, constantly proving. A woman who lives from her center radiates a calm that needs no explanation. This is not indifference, not coldness. It's the wisdom of knowing that your inner peace doesn't depend on external chaos. But here comes something important you need to understand. That peace doesn't come from avoiding conflict or suppressing emotions. It arises from a mature relationship with yourself, where you can feel deeply without getting lost in the feeling. Have you noticed how some people stand in the middle of a crisis and still radiate stability? Not because they feel nothing, but because they've learned how to be with themselves while feeling. That ability develops when you stop seeing your emotions as enemies to control and start seeing them as valuable information about your inner world. When you can say, I feel anger, and that's okay. I can feel this anger without projecting it onto others or having to suppress it. And that brings me to one of the most powerful aspects of a woman who knows her worth: authenticity in her every move. Integrity doesn't mean blindly following moral rules you learned in childhood. It means living in alignment with what your deepest inner voice recognizes as your truth. When there's no longer any separation between what you feel, think, and do, your very presence radiates clarity. People sense this inner coherence, even if they can't explain why they trust you. But being authentic doesn't mean saying everything you think or acting impulsively on your emotions. It means taking the time to know yourself well enough to act from your truth, not from your wounds. I've guided many women on their path to recognize the difference between authenticity and emotional reactivity. Reactivity comes from unprocessed pain, from automatic patterns we've developed to protect ourselves. Authenticity comes from conscious presence, from an inner space that allows you to choose how you respond to life. And that brings us to something essential: self-mastery. But I don't mean the rigid control you may have been taught. I mean the ability to not react automatically, but to respond from who you truly are. Reacting means acting reflexively, according to a program someone else planted in you. True self-mastery is the conscious pause that allows you to listen to yourself before you act. When you choose to respond from your deepest self, rather than from what others expect of you, your actions become powerful because they are rooted in your truth. Do you remember the last time you acted impulsively without that conscious pause? How did you feel afterward? Probably disconnected from yourself, as if an automatic version of you had taken over. Self-mastery is not suppression, it is lived self-love. It says, "You are worthy of my actions coming from my wisdom, not from my wounds." But I want to clarify something because I know this can be confusing. Self-mastery doesn't mean being calculating or cold. It means developing the ability to feel deeply while still remaining centered. A woman with true self-mastery can cry without losing herself in her tears. She can be angry without destroying. She can love without abandoning herself. And this brings me to something our culture has completely distorted: humility. Humility doesn't mean making yourself small so others feel comfortable, or diminishing your successes, or hiding your talents. True humility is the awareness that you are always in a process, not a finished product. It is keeping the door to learning open, no matter how many degrees you have, how much experience you've gained, or how much recognition you've received. A woman who knows she is always a student becomes powerful without needing to dominate. She grows without belittling others. I remember a successful director who came to me because, despite her career accomplishments, she felt empty inside. "I feel like I'm not learning anything new," she said. "They've put me on a pedestal, and now I'm afraid to show that I don't know everything." Her healing process began when she acknowledged that the pursuit of perfection had taken her away from the curiosity and freshness that once inspired her. True humility allows you to say, "I don't know," without feeling less worthy. To ask for help without fearing you'll appear weak. To change your mind when you receive new information. Because your self-image doesn't depend on always being right. But I also want to talk about something rarely mentioned: patience with yourself. We live in a culture of instant results where you're expected to grow, change, and transform according to timelines that aren't your own. But your soul does not operate on a corporate schedule. Patience means accepting your own process without judgment, without comparing yourself to others. It is honoring your pauses and your silence, granting yourself permission to ripen without pressure. You are not here to meet norms or compete. Your timing is sacred. I've seen women torment themselves for not getting over something fast enough, according to what they believed was appropriate. They blamed themselves for needing time to grieve losses, to integrate lessons, to heal deep wounds. But inner processes have their own wise timing. Sometimes it takes a year to understand something you experienced in a few minutes. Sometimes you need silence to piece together what you have lived intensely. Patience with yourself is a radical act of love in a world that constantly demands results from you. And that brings me to something that can transform your relationship with yourself. Embodied gratitude. I'm not talking about the superficial gratitude repeated like a mantra because someone said it's good for you. I'm talking about gratitude that is lived, felt in the body, that becomes a way you see and touch the world. This gratitude doesn't mean settling for less, but recognizing the richness of what's essential and what's already here. It doesn't need outside applause. It connects you to life itself and to your belonging in the whole. When you live in embodied gratitude, your presence changes, not because you perform gratitude, but because you truly see the miracle of life, that you are alive, that you are conscious, that you can choose how to experience your life. And finally, I want to tell you something that belongs only to you and can never be taken away. Your true expression. Your body language, the way you walk, look, take up space. These speak louder than any resume or image you try to create for others. You don't need to play a role. Your authentic way of being, your non-judgmental gaze, your silence while others are loud, this can be your strongest form of expression. I've worked with women who felt invisible, convinced they needed to be more extroverted, more charismatic, more to be seen. But what they truly needed was permission to just be themselves, to walk at their own pace, speak in their own rhythm, express their uniqueness without apology. Your body knows how to be you. Your soul knows how to express itself. What you've learned are layers of adaptation you believed you needed to survive in society. But now, as an adult woman, you have a choice. You can decide to shed those layers and let your essence express itself naturally. Do you know the difference between a woman who tries to impress and one who simply is? The first is constantly performing for an imaginary audience. The second is present in her own life. A woman who knows her worth has nothing to prove because she's not in competition with anyone. She is in relationship with herself and with life. Her worth doesn't lie in what she says to please or what she does to be accepted. Her worth is shown in how she treats herself when no one is looking, how she handles her mistakes, how she chooses to be present in this world without abandoning herself. When you live from your center without shouting who you are, you become a transformative presence. People sense that authenticity, that inner coherence, that peace which does not depend on external circumstances. And without you saying a word, it says everything. Because in the end, the deepest value you can offer the world is not an improved version of yourself, but the most honest and truthful version of who you already are. Your existence is enough. Your presence is valid. Your worth is innate. Not because someone else recognizes it, but because it is your deepest truth. And when you live from that truth, you radiate something the world desperately needs. The possibility that every human being can find their way back to themselves. That is your gift. That is your contribution. That is the power of transformation in a woman who fully dwells within herself. But I also want to be honest with you on one point. This path to yourself is not a destination you reach and stay at forever. It's a daily practice, a constant return to yourself. There will be days when you wake up and feel that old need again, to prove yourself, to explain, to justify your existence. And that's okay. It's not a mistake on your path. It's part of being human in a world that constantly urges you to abandon yourself. What changes is not the disappearance of those moments, but your ability to recognize them with compassion and to consciously choose to return to your center. For years, I've accompanied women through this process, and one thing I always tell them is this: the woman who concerns me most is not the one who doubts her worth, but the one who believes she no longer has doubts. Because doubt is an invitation to grow, a sign that you are still alive, that you are still in relationship with yourself. The security you are seeking doesn't come from never doubting again, but from building the trust that you will be there for yourself through every single doubt. When I watch women who have truly integrated these principles into their lives, I notice something special. They're not perfect, they haven't solved all their problems, they don't live without pain or confusion, but they have something that clearly sets them apart. They have an intimate relationship with themselves. They know their patterns, they recognize their triggers, they can name their needs without apologizing for them. And that frees them from the exhausting need to constantly prove themselves because they already know who they are. That intimacy with yourself allows you to have authentic relationships with others, because when you no longer need others to define you, you can truly see and experience them without the hidden need for validation. You can love without losing yourself, give without becoming drained, receive without feeling like you owe something in return, and you can be alone without feeling abandoned, because the most important relationship in your life is the one with yourself. This is the most radical freedom a woman can experience, the freedom to be wholly herself, without apologizing, without explaining, without the constant need for external approval. When you reach this space, your very presence becomes an invitation for others to fully dwell in themselves, without preaching, without pressure, simply through your being. Because ultimately, the most powerful way to change the world is to change the relationship you have with yourself. And I want to leave you with something I've learned through decades of deep transformational work. The moment you truly know you've internalized your worth is not the one where others recognize it, but when you find yourself in spaces where you are unseen, misunderstood, or even rejected, and you remain whole. That is the inner strength that allows you to say no without guilt when something doesn't align with your truth. That is the clarity with which you can say yes wholeheartedly when something truly fits you. I've seen women take years to learn how to set boundaries, but true strength doesn't lie in the boundaries you set with others. It lies in the promise you make to yourself to never betray yourself again. Every time you choose authenticity over social comfort, every time you place your emotional well-being above the expectations of others, you strengthen your relationship with yourself, a relationship no one can destroy. And here's a beautiful secret. When you no longer need external validation, paradoxically, people are even more drawn to you. Not because you're playing a psychological game, but because your authenticity is a relief in a world full of masks. When someone senses that you don't need anything from them in order to be at peace with yourself, they can relax in your presence, be themselves, because they don't feel the pressure of needing to uphold your self-worth. That is the difference between a woman who is searching for love and a woman who already loves herself. The first creates unrest in others because her emotional need is obvious. The second creates peace because her inner fulfillment is contagious. But don't idealize this path. There will be moments when your authenticity unsettles others, when your wholeness provokes conflict, when your inner peace is mistaken for indifference. And in those moments, you will have to choose. Will you abandon yourself to maintain external harmony? Or will you stand by yourself, even if that means being alone for a while? A woman who knows her worth chooses to stay with herself, not out of defiance, but out of love for herself. Because she has learned that betraying herself for shallow relationships is the highest price one can pay. Your worth is not negotiable. Your essence is not for sale. Your authenticity is not a currency to buy acceptance. And when you live from that certainty, something extraordinary happens. You begin to attract people who can love the real you, not the polished, carefully constructed version you created to please others. Those are the relationships that nourish your soul, that allow you to grow, that celebrate your full humanity.